Welcome to the Birds Words podcast where grit and faith meet. In this episode, I had the honor of interviewing David Williams. Get ready for some fun life stories. I'm John Birdwell, your host.
Linda and I only remember us going out one time before Thanksgiving break. And Harding was the kind of place where it just became a ghost town on holidays like that.
Yeah.
And almost everybody was from somewhere other than Searcy, so campus just emptied. Well, by that time, her parents had moved to Lynchburg, Virginia. And so at one point she had mentioned, that everybody would be going home for Thanksgiving. I was planning to go back to Alabama for Thanksgiving. And she said, but I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to go. It's too far. And she didn't have a car. A lot of college students back in the 60s and 70s didn't have their own car, pretty much lived on campus. And so she said, I'll have to stay over. And there would only be a handful of people that would still be on campus. I thought, boy, how lonely and all it would be. And everybody else is home with their families, and Linda's going to have to stay. And I also thought, opportunity. Road trip with Linda Martin. I thought, okay. So I said, hey, I've got a little money put back. I've got a car, all of that. I'd be glad to take you home for Thanksgiving.
Have you approached her about being fond of her yet or liking her yet?
No, we hardly knew each other.
And so you just saw this golden opportunity.
Exactly.
All right. You need transportation? It just so happens.
Just so happens. Yes. And I'll have to admit, I guess like any other college guy, I was very much about pretty girls. Mm-hmm. And she was pretty and she was nice, and all of that. And even though I wasn't really looking for any kind of lasting relationship, boy, I sure did enjoy going out with pretty girls, And so anyway, that's kind of where we were, and this was just an opportunity to get to spend some time. Well, of course, she turned me down. Who wouldn't? And I tell the girls in my classes when I tell this story don't you go out with a guy like that. Don't you go on a trip, 2 or 3 day trip or something like that with some guy that
you don't hardly
know. You never know what kind of person they're actually going to turn out to be. Well, anyway, she turned me down. All right, but eventually, I would see her occasionally on campus, and I would remind her that the offer was still good, if she wanted to go. And so finally, not long before Thanksgiving, we were sitting in the bleachers at a club softball game, and we would do casual conversation, and I reminded her, Thanksgiving's coming up close. I said, I'd love to take you. Would have a lot of fun. And kind of reluctantly, she said, well, if you're sure you want to do that, okay. And I remember they had just turned the field lights off, the stadium lights off, so it was dark there. And when she said that, what I saw was like fireworks in the sky, Of course, they weren't real. This was all mental.
Right.
I said,
it might as well have been.
Fireworks, great, All right, so we got all set. Mustang was clean and tuned and all of this. Linda made some snacks, and so we're going to drive from Searcy, Arkansas to Nashville, Tennessee on Wednesday afternoon, spend the night at her grandmother's home, all right, and then take off real early Thanksgiving morning and drive the rest of the way to Lynchburg, which was some distance, spend Thanksgiving there, a couple of days, at her house, and then basically retrace our route, back to Searcy and be there for classes, on Monday. All right, so everything is going fine. We're on a pretty tight time schedule. The problem was that my car was fast, and we're on the interstate, and I'm not really trying to show out or anything like that, but back then it was amazing. If you were in between large cities, the interstate was just open road. The traffic was very light back in the early 70s, and we're on I-40 for much of the trip. all of this.
Yeah, there's some big stretches of just
just
fields and woods
right,
on the.
Right,
Yeah.
and I do know that I glanced down at the speedometer one time, and I was doing 120.
That had to have been the max of the speedometer.
Well, I had like a GT interior and all, and it had 140 mile an hour speedometer.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't guarantee exactly. A lot of times speedometers are not that accurate at really high speeds, but anyway, the speedometer said 120. Linda seemed to not even notice. I don't know. She may have been paralyzed, by all of this. But in control, the car, custom suspension, all this stuff, and we were just sort of like a red streak heading down the highway. Well, but anyway, what does happen on the second day? Now we've hit I-81. We're heading into the Blue Ridge. It was gorgeous, and so Linda has in very non-typical fashion. She's kind of propped up on a pillow on the passenger seat, and she's napping a little bit. It's still pretty early Thanksgiving morning, and I'm running up through there. We're in the Blue Ridge. It has snowed, but the highway is perfectly clear. But there's 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground on either side, and you're up in the mountains. It's a beautiful day. It's just wonderful. We're running up through there, and we had just crossed the Virginia line, and we almost no traffic. But I came into a few cars there. I slowed down, and to make a lane change, I looked up in the mirror, and there was this big black Plymouth, all right, obviously being driven by a state trooper, and I can see him motioning me over, to the shoulder of the interstate.
Yep.
And so I eased over. Of course, I did. I'd slowed down a lot. When I looked at my speedometer, in Virginia, the speed limit on the interstate was 65 instead of Tennessee 75. And I looked at the speedometer. I was doing 90 at that point. All right, I pulled over on the shoulder, and I told Linda, I said, she woke up, and I just, when I pulled over on the shoulder, and I told her, don't worry, we've just been pulled over by a trooper. I said, I'll take care of everything, don't worry. All right, and so I stepped out of my car, which that really wasn't smart. Okay, but at the same time, I really did not want to talk to the trooper in front of Linda.
Yeah.
So I stepped out of the car. About the time he stepped out of his, he motioned me back to his car, got in the car, which was like had a big 440 Magnum Interceptor type engine in it.
He asked you to sit in his car with him in the front seat?
In the front seat. I'm sitting there. Now, bear in mind, this is 1971.
Yeah, it's a different time.
It is.
Yeah, different tactics. Yeah.
Right, a completely different. And he sat me in there, and the first thing he said was, do you smell that? His big 440 Magnum had overheated, so you're getting that steamy antifreeze smell coming in.
Right in the cab.
Right there under the dash. And he said, I just about burned this thing up chasing you down. He was pretty unhappy.
Yeah.
And I apologized. Of course, as I'm sort of apologizing, he's on his radio, and he's calling off the roadblocks and interceptors that have been placed on I-40.
He thought you were going to make a run for it.
Right, and he wasn't catching up with me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, so he's radioed ahead, and he's calling that off and telling them to stand down, that he's apprehended me.
Yeah, he's not using his extra 50 miles an hour on his speedometer.
Right. And so, he asked, of course, check my license, registration, and all. Of course, I'm from Alabama, and therefore I have a license which didn't even look like a license to him. It wasn't a plastic credit card, like a little piece of paper is what it was.
like just a regular sheet of paper.
Yeah, well, it was a little kind of green colored, little small piece of paper you could fold up. And he looked at it like, what's this? And then he realized it's actually an Alabama driver's license.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what registration was at the time. And I had registration papers, which was my tag receipt, but they were at home in my desk drawer. I didn't want to lose them, so I didn't have registration. I thought,
and not everything's widely accessed computer files where they can get on
that.
it.
And I
so
thought,
Yeah, you have to have it there.
Yes, and of course, being from rural Alabama, I'll have to admit I had been stopped on numerous occasions, but nobody ever asked for registration.
Yeah.
So I explained, that I don't even know for sure that I have registration, and I don't know if we do that in Alabama. All right, well, and I thought, well, I've got a problem here. But that really didn't seem to bother him, didn't matter to him. All right, but he said, step back up to your car, get in, and follow me. All right, so I went back up, got in, and told Linda that we were going to follow the trooper. So we went up the interstate, crossed over, headed back down south on I-81 to Abington, Virginia. All right, and got out. And so, of course, it's Thanksgiving. Everything's closed. The courthouse is closed. All right, but what I found out had happened was he had radioed in, and they had to call in a judge on Thanksgiving Day to come in on what turned out to be her off day on Thanksgiving holiday to deal with me.
Oh, yeah, this is lined up to be a good story right
Oh. Well, actually, the most important part of the story happens from between our car, or our cars, and the courthouse. And Linda kind of fades out of the picture here. I mean, I know she's there, but I don't exactly remember where. She's walking with us. But I do remember we're walking down the sidewalk to the courthouse. I was considerably taller than the trooper. He's all business, but he's not really mean. He's kind of talking to me like a father talks to a son. All right, I don't think Linda even hears this. We're walking shoulder to shoulder. I think she may be behind us or somewhat ahead of us. I think she's behind us.
Yeah.
All right, and he says to me, now bear in mind, I really thought she was special. Now, I had no idea. I didn't know if she would be the one. I wasn't really looking for the one at that time, but she was special. I really liked her already. Mm-hmm. And as we're walking up there, he's talking about how dangerous it was to drive as fast as I was driving. The estimate was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 to 130 miles an hour. And he could certify, as a matter of fact, on my citation, all that, he could certify that I was doing in excess of 115. He knew that, but he was not, by the time he was able to catch up with me, I had already slowed down to 90. And so he did not know absolutely, but he could say without a doubt, excess of 115. All right, and so he's talking about how dangerous that was, and just a blown out tire, anything, a lot of things could have happened. What a terrible accident, chances of survival nearly zero, all this stuff. And then he hit me with the line that I will never forget. And he said to me, he said, "You should have more respect for that young lady than to drive like that with her in the car." It was like he took out a big knife and stabbed me in the heart at that point.
Oh, I bet it was.
I mean, that killed me. At that point,
I bet it did.
Nothing else really mattered. Of course, they take us on to the jail. The judge comes out. He describes what happens and all. And then the judge, who was a lady, who was obviously not happy with me, and she was obviously not happy with him that he had brought me there on Thanksgiving morning. And she said, "Mr. Williams, how do you plead?" Which kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for the formalities. And she was wanting a guilty or not guilty. Well, I didn't say anything like either one. And all I remember I said to her, I said, "Everything that the officer has said is true." And without any other comment, bam, she hit her gavel, there on the podium, and says, "Guilty as charged." All right. And she set my fine at what in today's money would be somewhere in the $650 range.
Ouch.
Okay, which I had some money for the trip. And of course, it wasn't actually that much. It was just somewhat over $100. But a typical speeding ticket back then was $25.
Yeah.
Of course, I got reckless driving because I was in excess of 50 miles an hour over the speed limit. All right, I didn't have the money, and I explained that I didn't have it. I would have to make arrangements. All right, and so at that point, they took me to the Washington County Jail, Linda and I both. Okay.
Wait, why did she go?
Well, there was nowhere else for her to go.
They actually booked her into the jail? Or
no.
She stayed outside?
She stayed outside. But initially what happened was we sat in what was the dispatch room, and they allowed me to make a call on the payphone. Okay, so I called home, and I asked Dad, or actually I asked for Dad. Mom answered the phone. Now, they knew what I was doing. Linda's parents did not know what she was doing. This was supposed to be a big surprise, her just arriving unannounced for Thanksgiving dinner and all, a big surprise. And it was a big surprise. It just wasn't the one we thought it was going to be. Yeah. All right, so yeah. I called home. I asked for Dad. Mom immediately knew that something was up because I didn't call home that much. Of course, I had to call home, collect, and all that. No cell phones back then or anything. And asking for Dad, she knew there's something going on here. And of course, she was, of course, kind, and but I know she knew, oh, he's done it again, whatever.
Yeah.
So Dad comes to the phone, and he called me Bud. He said, "Hi, Bud. Happy Thanksgiving." I said, "Hey, Pop. Happy Thanksgiving to you." He said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Well, not so good right now." I said, "Had a little problem up here, and I got a speeding ticket on the way to Virginia, and I don't have enough money to cover it." And of course, I did not know how they did this. I'd just seen it in the movies or on TV or something about wiring money. I'd never had any money wired to me or anything. But I said, if you could wire me the money, I said, I'll pay you back this summer. When I work this summer. He said, "Well, of course." He said, "What do you need?" Okay. Well, I told him, and I remember how quiet it got on the phone. It just like the phone went dead for several seconds there. So I'm listening, and in just a real calm but serious voice, he said, "You were going pretty fast, weren't you?"
Oh.
I said, "Yes, sir, I was." But I said, "If you can see your way clear to send me the money, I'll pay you back this summer." He said, "I'll take care of it." And I said, "Well, I love you, Pop." He said, "Love you, Bud." And we hung up. I went and told Linda. Well, we waited out there for quite some time, and nothing arrived. I finally talked Linda into calling her dad, who was about 2 hours or maybe a little more away, and to come pick her up. I said, "I'm fine. There's no reason for you to stay here. Let your dad come get you. Y'all enjoy Thanksgiving." I said, "I'll be up there when I can." Well, she didn't want to do that, but she finally did, and so she called her dad and told him what was going on. Mm-hmm. And at that point, she kind of started to cry a bit. She was trying not to, but she's kind of sobbing, on the phone, all of that. Of course, I'm feeling worse by the second.
Yeah.
But of course, he says he'll be right there as soon as he can get there. So we sat out there for a couple more hours, and then her dad comes in. Of course, he doesn't know me. He's never heard of me. I'm not a big enough part of her life for him to write home about. All of this, he's picking up his daughter at the county jail with this guy from Alabama, kind of a tall, lanky, kind of long-haired guy, rock and roll guitar player type.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I am willing to take whatever comes.
Yeah.
I feel so bad about all of this, and it is all my fault. It is all my fault. He walks in, and of all things, he's a very trim man, very clean cut, casual dressed, but very nicely dressed and all that. Come to find out, he's a wealthy man, a big electrical engineer with General Electric, and many accomplishments and patents and all this stuff. Okay, he walks in. I'm ready. If he wants to take a swing, well, here I am.
Take the beating. I deserve it.
I'm just, I just feel terrible. Of all things, he asked me, what my fine is, everything. I tell him. He pulls his checkbook out, and he starts to write a check. But then the deputy sheriff there tells him, sorry, no checks. This has to be absolute cash money. Well, at that point in time, hardly anybody carried over $100 in their wallet. Yeah, in cash. I mean, that was a lot of money back then. I mean, my really good summer job paid $2 an hour. That meant I made $80 a week before taxes. Okay, anyway, he didn't have that much cash on him, and so I told him, y'all go ahead. I said, I have money on the way, and y'all go ahead and go. There's no point in anybody staying with me. I'm good, and so at that point, I convinced him to go on. I said, when my money arrives, I'll get out. I'll come on up. Okay, so they left, and that's when they put me in the lockup. And when they took me back to lock me up, the deputy sheriff patted me down, took my belt. I think I had on boots, or they would have taken my shoestrings, I think. All of this. And he informed me that this was not just any ordinary county lockup. He said, we hold serious federal inmates here. And I said, you mean like murderers and such? And he says, absolutely. And I thought, oh no.
They're here for the speeding ticket.
Yeah, they're going to throw me in there with all these terrible people. And I said, here I am, some young guy with long blonde hair. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to me? At that point now, I'm concerned. All right, so they put me in the tank. Lucky there was nobody else in the tank, which is ordinarily a pretty nasty place. So I'm in there by myself. Some of the inmates come by, and I'm locked in the tank. They're outside. They're looking at me, kind of pointing at me and all. Older, rough-looking guys. I'm thinking, boy, buddy, I'm glad to be locked up in here, away from them. But in a little while, they come in, give me an army blanket, a pillow, come with me. So I had two deputies on either shoulder. We walked up several flights of stairs, and on every landing was another deputy sheriff with a pump shotgun. And I'm thinking, it's like I shot the president, or something. I thought I'm in here for a traffic violation, but very, very tight security. And they were discussing where they were going to put me. And they were tossing some ideas back and forth.
The same person that they trusted enough to have you follow them to the courthouse in your own car, right?
Right, in my own car.
So, that's good.
But now, so here we go, and in that discussion, they finally decided that they were going to put me in with BabyDoll. The guy, that's his only name.
The notorious.
But we're going to put him in that, and I'm not part of the conversation, but I'm in between both of them, so I'm hearing everything they're saying and all. And they rejected a few other places or whatever, and let's just put him in with BabyDoll. And I'm thinking, BabyDoll? Oh no, what? So sure enough. They take me in there, open a big steel door. I step in. The person I supposed to be, BabyDoll, was down at the far end. There were 5 cells. They were locked shut. There's kind of an open area there with a picnic table, and some picnic benches attached to it. And you were kind of in a cage outside the cells. They're long and narrow. And BabyDoll turns and looks at me as the door closes behind me. And I knew immediately how he got the name BabyDoll. He was an older guy, not really old, but I'm guessing that he's maybe late 40s, something like that. He looked like a character from a Batman movie.
Oh, no.
Okay, I look at him, and it looks like his face is painted on. It appears like he's got theatrical makeup on. The thing of it is, he doesn't have any makeup on. I mean, he's a true baby face, but they call him BabyDoll. His face looks like a baby doll's face.
Yeah, was it some kind of disease with the pigmentation of the skin?
Well, no, he had normal pigmentation, and it's very.
But it was just the.
Like I said, he looked like he had makeup on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and now here was the real killer, too. Was he looks at me and he starts talking to me, which I found out that he never stopped. When I watched the movie Forrest Gump for the first time, when Forrest starts talking, it was BabyDoll's voice. He talked exactly like Forrest Gump.
Really?
All right. Now, it was obvious that he was damaged.
Oh, man.
Okay. Obviously, alcohol and other drugs had damaged him. And, of course, sort of my unusual situation, growing up and everything, I had been around older men who drank a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, and BabyDoll had that look. You could, when you looked in his eyes, his face, and everything, you could tell this is a guy that is a lifetime drinker, and he's drunk hard for a long time. Okay, so anyway, so I spend Thanksgiving Day locked up with BabyDoll. He talks without stop about nothing that I am interested in talking about. All right, and I have to listen to that, and I listen to that, and I wait, and my money, I hear nothing. They brought us a Thanksgiving dinner there in the jail, and I just, by that time, I had no appetite. I don't think. But anyway, any kind of food that I didn't want, BabyDoll wolfed it down immediately, and so it's nighttime now. And so we're sitting there, and he's still talking to me.
Yeah, you've already tried to fatten him up to go to sleep maybe early, so right. You don't have to deal with
an alarm goes off. The cell doors slide open. BabyDoll says, "Grab your stuff, get in a cell." So I grab up my stuff, jump in a cell. Alarm goes off again. Boom, the door's shut. Okay, and at least now I'm locked in a cell by myself away from him. There's an empty cell between the two of us. I am absolutely exhausted. And I'm thinking, finally, I can get some rest. Which, there was no rest.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
He kept on. And he kept asking me what color was my GTO. And I told him I didn't have a GTO. It was a Mustang, but that never stuck. All right. He also told me that he could tell me the lawyers that I needed to get. He knew all the good ones. Okay. He told me how lucky I was to be in this jail because he knew about all of the other neighboring county jails. This one was by far the best. Okay, and all of that, and that went on. He called me Alabama. He'd yell at me, "Hey, Alabama," and then here we go. And I'd try to answer his questions and all that. And then
what a Thanksgiving!
So finally, just about the time he quieted down, and I got to sleep, he starts yelling. He wants a cigarette. Okay. Of course, I'm thinking they don't let people smoke in jail like this, which I found out they do.
Yeah,
so they did. Okay, and so he kept on. That's when I found out that there were other inmates nearby. So he's yelling. They start yelling at him to be quiet, and of course they're saying a lot of really nasty things in the process. And he won't quit, and they won't quit. And then what happens is he starts shaking the door to his cell, which just echoes. They start doing the same thing, and each cell had a toilet with a push button flush feature, and those toilets sounded like a cannon when they flushed in that jail. And so everybody starts hitting their toilet buttons, and it sounds like World War III. Okay, and so I'm thinking, I'm in here for a reckless driving citation.
Yep.
There's going to be a riot. I'm going to wind up in here for 10 years for being a part of it. All of this, it's just dreadful. Okay, finally, here comes a couple of deputies wanting to know what's the big problem, what's going on, and they get everything quieted down. BabyDoll wants some cigarettes. They asked him if he had any money in his folder, and he said, yeah. Anyway, they went and got him a pack of cigarettes and a box of matches and slid it to him, under the sort of bullpen area, across the bullpen area and all that. And finally he goes to sleep at just about the time the alarm rings and the doors open for everybody to get up the next morning. All right, and so he says, make your bed, get out. I made my bed up, jumped out. Everything slammed shut. So here I am again, stuck out there in that bullpen area with BabyDoll, where I spent the next day. Still, money hasn't come. And what happened was, what I came to find out was, Dad had wired the money to Abingdon, Virginia, through Western Union in downtown Florence. They had made a mistake, and instead of wiring it to Abingdon, Western Union wired it to Arlington.
Oh, okay. No.
And Arlington was about as far away from Abingdon as you could get and still be in Virginia. Okay, so the money's lost in transit. Okay, Friday afternoon, finally, the jailer comes in, and what had happened, Western Union had put a trace on all of that, and the money gets to Abingdon. My money arrived. They let me out. Got all my stuff out of my envelope. I had been in jail, the better part of Thursday and Friday, and I never felt so free as when I walked out of there. Okay. Now, I realize this is getting to be a really long story, but I'll try to wrap it up with this. Of course, made it up to Lynchburg, spent basically one day with the Martin family. They were really nice to me. Took Linda back to Harding. We continued to be good friends. Went out from time to time. All of that. This was not a real bonding issue. My friends thought it was the funniest story they'd ever heard about me all pumped for spending the weekend with Linda Martin and winding up spending the weekend in jail.
With BabyDoll.
Yeah, with BabyDoll. All right, but then years and years later, just a few years ago, I decided to try to contact that state trooper. His name was on my citation. His name was Officer or Trooper J.C. Cumbo, C-U-M-B-O. Had never heard that name before. Anyway, one of my nieces, who was really good with computers and all, within a matter of a minute or two, she had his address, phone number, everything. I asked her, I said, can you do that to anybody? She said, sure. I said, boy, I don't think I like that.
Yeah.
All right. But anyway, so I called him. I called him up. I decided I wanted to tell him that on that day, he said something to me that made a difference in my life. It wasn't something that I didn't already know, but now it was really real.
Yeah, solidified.
Right, it stayed with me. It was, and I just wanted him to know that. All right, and I called, and of all things, of course, his wife answers the phone, and I asked, may I speak to Trooper J.C. Cumbo? And she immediately says, what business do you have with my husband? Of course, I'm sure there were some other people that would like to have had some words with him over the years. Yeah. All right. But anyway, and I explained why I was wanting to talk to him. And she said, well, he is retired. And she said he works security at the Washington County Courthouse, where we had both gone 30 years earlier or more. All right. And she said he thought they'd be done early today. And she said, he's going to want to talk to you. And then she went on to tell me, she said, 2 years ago, our son died on the job site of a heart attack. He basically just fell over dead. There's nothing that anybody could do for him. He's gone. And she called him James. She said, James has never gotten over that. And then she said, about 2 weeks ago, a fella, Virginia State Trooper, that basically Officer Cumbo had trained with and they had served together their entire careers, died. And she said James was a pallbearer at his funeral. And she said he's been pretty down, since that happened. And she said, I'll have him call you when he gets home. All right, so I had my cell phone. I was at school. So happened I was at break and I got a phone call. And it was Trooper Cumbo. And he identified himself and he just said, what can I do for you? And I explained and I said, I just wanted you to know, that day when you stopped me on the interstate and all that. And I told him what he had said and, how much, it was a real wake-up call for me, how much it had meant to me. I grew up a lot after that one sentence, all of that. And he, with, no real emotion or anything like that, basically just said, well, I'm glad I was able to help you along the way a little. And I wanted to know, I asked him, I said, do you remember any of that? He said, not a thing. Which, again, that didn't hurt my feelings at all. And I thought to myself, I thought maybe the sharp car, maybe the high speed and out of state, all of this, maybe that it might be enough that if his memory was jogged,
ring the bell.
he might not. He said, no, he said, apparently you did not give me any trouble, because he said, if you had given me trouble, if you had been a problem for me, he said, I would have remembered you, because he said, I can remember things further back than that. And I said, well, no. I said, I was taught better than that. I was raised better than that. And I might have been careless, but I was not disrespectful directly to authority. And I said, I definitely did not give you any trouble. And then I asked him, I said, would you happen to remember a character named BabyDoll? And he said, no, never heard of him. But he said, I really had nothing to do much with the Washington County Jail. He said, that would have been county people. He said, in your situation, I would have dropped you off at the county jail. And he was correct. He wasn't there maybe 10 minutes, maybe not that. And he said, I'm gone, on about my day. And he said, I'm sure, the Washington County people, he said, I'm sure there are people who would remember a character like that. He said, but I don't. Well, anyway, when I tell this story to the kids, among other things, the big lesson in this, I said, you can tell, of course, if you can imagine this, when I'm telling the kids, I go into more detail, which it's just too long, really. Yeah. Okay, but I said, here is an event in my life that I will never forget. I remember sounds. I remember things that I saw. I remember smells. I remember all kinds of details. And one of the main characters in my story doesn't remember it at all. And he was there. He was definitely a part of it. And I said, you will touch people's lives and never know it. You'll say and do things that you don't even remember doing or saying, that there will be other people who may remember that forever. And I said, you're the kind of people that have so much influence on the other people around you. You need to know that. And you may not really believe me at this point, but it's true. And so, there's my epic story.
Well, that is a powerful and somewhat hilarious story, situation you found yourself in. And it's so true. And I think one of the big things in life about when you're doing something meaningful in general or trying to help is it's so tempting to think, I'm not making a difference. Looking back, did I do anything that was worth,
Right.
And I think that's a phenomenal lesson to teach anybody. anyone who's trying to make a difference in the world or just in general.
Yes.
All right. Thanksgiving in jail.
Thanksgiving in jail.
Well, so a couple things, from the family perspective here.
Good.
Seems like he was a pretty nice fella, her dad. I mean, what did he?
Yes.
To treat you that way and still invite you to dinner. That sounds pretty nice, isn't it?
Yes. Well, and here's the thing about his name was George Martin, George E. Martin. He graduated first in his class from Vanderbilt University. He was a World War I vet in the Army Air Corps. He was only in for a short time because he turned kind of like my father, who was in the Navy. They actually were born about the same time, and they only served a few months at the end of the war before the war was over. But he came back from the Army Air Corps, went to Vanderbilt, and he was a true genius. His IQ was out the roof. He came from a single-parent family. His father left them during the Great Depression, and so his mother raised he and his brother. Both of them turned out to be very successful people.
So he had seen his fair share of hard times.
Oh, yes. I mean, and, to the point that it was almost hard for me to imagine how he could have gone to Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. Vanderbilt is an expensive school, always has been and all that, but of course his mother, was smart. She was well educated. She had a good job and all, and I don't know how they managed it, but both he and his brother went to Vanderbilt.
Wow.
And like I said, then he was hired right out of college by General Electric.
Yeah.
He was one of the designers of the Triton nuclear submarine.
Yeah.
And other big projects. Much of what he did, he couldn't talk about.
Yeah,
And,
but you would almost think that would even drive more of a wedge with how he treats people. Not to judge,
yes,
but
yes.
but so was that just his character trait?
Right. Well, and the thing that I've noticed, a lot of people who are as smart as he was, a lot of times they're not really socially well adjusted, it seems
Mm-hmm.
like. They don't really fit in well with just average people.
Yeah.
If you didn't know George and who he was and what he did, he was just another one of the guys, just another nice guy who went way out of his way.
Yeah.
There is no telling how many unfortunate people he helped during his lifetime.
Wow.
That's good. Like I said, he was actually born in McEwen, Tennessee, and they moved to Nashville when he was young. Mm-hmm. He wound up marrying a nice lady from Waltham, Massachusetts, where he was working for GE at one time. They wound up in New York. That's where all the kids were raised. He was a true Bible scholar, Bible teacher.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's good.
Yeah, I just don't think you could have met a more cordial, more friendly, more regular, down-to-earth type person, which I think that just made him that much more special.
Yeah, and so then on the other side, when you called your dad about that mistake, did you all have the kind of relationship where you felt pretty comfortable, or did you felt so pinned in a disgusting place with BabyDoll and made such a mess of it that you didn't have anything to do but be brave? Or, did you feel pretty confident in your all's relationship there?
Well, yes, but of course my dad was the high school principal at Mars Hill, and long time high school principal. Mm-hmm. He knew a lot about young people, and that was a big problem for me because I tell the kids, you complain because you say your parents just don't understand. I said, well, you can get away with everything. I said, my dad understood. That was my problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so he understood, but, Dad was patient. Dad was very firm. He had expectations, and those expectations needed to be met. And of course, typically in a situation like this, he was going to take care of me, and help me. But then he was also going to take care of me again when I got home, And so anyway, and that's the way life had always been for me. Dad was very patient. He never raised his voice to me in my life. I heard his voice change tone occasionally, and when I heard that tone, I knew he was upset. But there was no yelling or anything like that, and it was all matter of fact. And here's where you've messed up, and now here's the price you're going to pay.
Yeah. So do you like that style of parenting? Because some might use it as a tool. If you're trying to scold and you really let somebody know. So was most of his punishment that he dished out was, you said it's just kind of a tone change, same volume level, but then he put some things in place like you're going to work all summer and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, here was the thing. I think he realized that I was the kind of kid who could be talked to.
Yeah, okay,
and all of that. Of course, though, Dad also realized that here's what happens. Any time, Mom handled sort of the everyday small issues. Mm-hmm. When it got bumped up to Dad, okay.
You're in federal court now,
yes,
baby.
Absolutely. This is a big thing. And with Mom, I would kind of dicker maybe or argue a little bit.
Yeah.
With Dad, it was pretty much yes sir, no sir. That was it. Okay. But here's what would happen. I know we've gone a long time here, and I don't have time for this story, but I got caught raiding a watermelon patch. Bear in mind, I'm a country kid, growing up in the '60s in Alabama. Yeah. Every country kid had raided a watermelon patch. But anyway.
Like a rabbit getting a carrot.
Right.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, and of course, Dad was informed, and he confronted me about it. I have to admit, when I was growing up, I didn't always tell the truth exactly. Mm-hmm. But that really wasn't very often.
Yeah.
For the most part, I was truthful. And face to face, eye to eye with him, I couldn't tell a lie. I couldn't.
Well, that's what I was kind of curious about asking.
And in that situation, he asked me, "Did I do it?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And he said, "Do you have any money?" I said, "I have a little." He said, "Go get it." And he said, "We're going over to Arch Robinson's farm, and I'm going to park way down the road, and you're going to walk up to his house by yourself and pay him for those melons."
How many did you take? Were you taking them to eat them?
I don't know. I took all the money I had, which Dad thought would probably be sufficient for what we did.
For whatever was taken.
As it turned out, Arch wouldn't take my money. Mm. He offered us watermelons anytime we wanted any. Of course, I'm feeling worse and worse by the moment because he was a poor man, and standing there on the front porch by myself, I couldn't look at him. I remember I had my head bowed, and I noticed, this is the first time I'd ever noticed this, when you cry with your head bowed, the tears don't run down your cheeks, they fall out of your eyes. And I was watching the teardrops hit the floor of his dusty front porch while I'm talking to him. I can barely get the words out. He's the nicest old man you could have ever imagined.
Do you remember how old you were at this point?
When I tell the story, I call it the Great Watermelon Raid of 1966. All right. And so I think I was 15 years old at the time. All right. And there is a chance I could have been 14. I might be a year off. But I was about that. And so Arch wouldn't take my money. Interesting thing, the only thing he wanted to know from me, he wanted to know who my dad was. All right, so I walk back and get in the car. Long dirt drive up to Arch's house. Told Dad what had happened. Now, of course, that was not my punishment. That was just making things right. Okay, and so we went home. My punishment, Dad, he didn't whip me. I was kind of a tough, knothead of a kid, and a good whipping.
It wouldn't have done much good anyway.
Right. That just wouldn't make the impression.
Yeah, if it would have worked, he would have done it, but you needed something a little different.
Oh, yeah, and Dad knew exactly the buttons to push. And so, my punishment for that was grounded for 2 weeks. Now, that didn't mean that I went back to my bedroom and played on my computer. Of course, we didn't have computers back then.
Yeah.
I didn't sit around and watch TV. Grounded for 2 weeks meant that I could not leave our property. We had a sort of a small farming operation there. There was a backlog of nasty jobs that had been put off that needed to be done. And so for 2 weeks, from the time I got up until the time typically, well, at least until supper time.
You got the good stuff.
You're right. I worked every day, watched all my friends ride by on their bikes going down to the creek to go swimming. I'm out there working in the garden or the orchard or in the pasture or whatever. They'd ride by me, wave to me as they went by. All right, and so 2 weeks of hard labor, there on our small farming property there, and I learned my lesson. It was the hot part of summer. So I'm out there all day, every day, and picking butter beans.
Yeah, and it's a good lesson that was really driven all on that one.
It didn't just go a good hard whipping. Give me 10 minutes, I'm as good as new.
Yeah.
2 weeks, all day, every day. It was worse than jail.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, that's where Dad was, and I really respected my dad. My grandparents lived next door to us, and I loved them. They loved me, and I do remember telling Dad, I said, you do whatever you think you need to do. But I said, please don't tell Grandma and Grandpa about this.
Yeah.
They thought I was wonderful.
Yeah.
And here I am, I'm a thief.
Which in reality, they're not going to think that.
I remember that. But I said, Dad was very even. He was understanding, but he and my grandfather both, they basically had their standards and their boundaries. And, as a son and as a grandson, I was expected to live up to those standards and within those boundaries. Mm-hmm. And if I did not, then there was a price to pay. There was always a price to pay. Yeah. And anyway, I got to say, I had a really terrific childhood, wonderful childhood. I lived outdoors all the time, shooting my .22 rifle.
Yeah, I love the outdoors. Yeah.
And with my friends and all of that. My parents pretty much let me live that way, which was just nearly outdoors all the time.
What was your favorite thing to hunt?
Well,
with a .22, I imagine.
Yeah, with a .22. It was actually handed down from my grandfather. It was a little Remington Model 12B pump. Shot 22 shorts. It was a gallery special, a takedown rifle that my granddad years and years ago had traded a typewriter for it.
Really?
To a man who was sending his daughter to college. She needed a typewriter. Yeah. And so Granddad swapped a typewriter that he had for the rifle. He squirrel hunted with it, and it became my squirrel rifle.
Yeah.
And so that's what I grew up doing. There really wasn't a lot in the way of deer hunting and so forth when I was growing up, but there was a lot of small game hunting. Mm-hmm. So I mostly squirrel hunted with it. I rabbit hunted with it a little bit.
That's a little tougher, I imagine.
Yes, it is. Of course, you look for their eye. We didn't have dogs, when I did that. So
when you're coming into a patch of field or something, you're looking for
walking the fields, and you're looking for the rabbit's eye because they camo in, but they have a large, dark eye. And if you know what to look for, you can see that. You know, if you get, and a lot of times they let you get very close before they run, and so you can you oftentimes ease right up there close to them, you know, and take your shot while they're sitting still.
Yeah, did you clean them?
Yes, I have on occasion, which actually I don't like cleaning squirrels.
Yeah.
Rabbits are really not much trouble to skin, actually. And I still enjoy eating squirrels and rabbits, on occasion.
Oh, yeah. I've got some family, and as they would call it, thinning out the squirrel population on all the acorn trees and beech trees, and so, it's an interesting thing.
That's correct.
All right, so jumping back to some stories about Linda, and I think this is the last one I have with her, but my wife was adamant that I ask you about this, and my wife has some beautiful natural eyelashes, and so she said that she remembers this story, and it just has stuck with her, and she laughed so hard. So what is the eyelash story?
Okay. All right, we're just married, and like I said, we're getting up and going to work every morning and so forth. We rented a little house on Rash Road for $80 a month.
Yeah, not too far from.
Well, right. As a matter of fact, like I said, I live in the Underwood community, still do, so I'm not very far from here at all. Yeah. And this area here, like I used to know almost everybody that lived on Mud Road, on this, especially the strip close to Old Savannah Highway, the part of it. All right, but so we're on Rash Road, little rental house, and we had fixed it all up and all, and but it was still really an old, rundown house. It had no air conditioning, and of course, Linda came from a wealthy background. Everything about her family was really understated. They owned property. They had a nice house, but it wasn't a mansion. All of this. George was very practical, about her dad and all of that. But they lived well. They lived very well. Snow skied in Vermont, in the winter times, and did all of this nice stuff and nice vehicles and on like that. But and here I am. We were not poor people, but we were definitely not wealthy people either. We were just sort of your average Northwest Alabama type people, And all right, and so I might preface this. Linda, who was the sweetest girl I believe I had ever met in my life, and I had really known some really nice girls, growing up and in college and all, but she was just the sweetest. But of all things, she told me at one point that she would never set foot in the state of Alabama. Of course, she's from New York, I guess. I guess her impression of Alabama was just pretty low.
I could probably list 4 or 5 people off the top of my head right now that has said they will never move to this community. And then they love it more than anybody else.
Well,
so anyway, it's funny you said that from that long ago.
And not only, of course, we weren't to sort of the point of talking about moving there, because we had sort of become an item, but we're not talking marriage yet or anything like that. But she's not talking about just living in Alabama. She's not going to ever go to Alabama at any time for any reason. And of course, my thinking was, how can Mississippi be okay? Or Arkansas be okay, Tennessee be okay, and Alabama be so bad, And so I'm kind of wondering about sort of our future. Of course, we don't know how and where we're going to wind up or anything like that. But anyway, it struck me as odd. Of course, so what happens is eventually, as we got a little closer and closer, I talked her into coming home with me for a weekend. All right, and of course, I didn't know how that was going to work, but by that time we had gotten to really know each other well and all, but she agreed. So I thought, well, she's moderated a little bit on this issue,
Yeah.
All right, so we crossed the Alabama state line, coming out of Mississippi into Alabama on Highway 72. There used to be a monument there Alabama state line monument. It might still be there. I really haven't noticed lately. Small but nice. There was a little pull-off there. We're in the legendary Mustang. We get to the state line and that pull-off, I whip off the highway, do a little four-wheel drift in the gravel there, slide out, kick open the door to the Mustang, fall to my knees, bend over, kiss the ground, and let out my best rebel yell. I'm back home in Alabama, And Linda just sort of sat there. She didn't seem upset. She just seemed like, kind of, what's he doing? Okay, so I get back in the car and off we go. My mother fell in love with Linda. It was obvious that my mom liked her better than she liked me, which I didn't blame her for that at all.
Yeah.
Okay, and Linda fell in love with my grandfather. He was old line Southern gentleman. He referred to her as Miss Linda. He would have been in his 80s by that time, and Linda thought he was just absolutely the best, So immediately Linda becomes part of the family,
Okay.
in one way or the other.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're married now. We're living in this little rented, rundown house. We actually later on moved to another little rundown house that we owned. And yet we had no money. Both of us together weren't making one good salary together,
Yeah, but love's abounding.
Well, some of our absolute favorite memories go back to that time when we had nothing and we were living in these little places, and all of that and that. But we're up one morning. We're getting ready to go to work, I suppose. We only had one little bitty bathroom that had the ugliest tile you have ever seen. It was scrap tile, you could tell. None of the colors matched. Some of the tile was black that was mentioned in there. It was just awful. It looked like something you'd see in a bad dream. But anyway, we had to getting ready for school and all of that. We had to share that little bitty bathroom. It was pretty tight for just one person. So she's getting all ready. She's always been very particular about her looks. And that was something that I appreciated about her. She was just always pretty, always pretty. So she's at the mirror, and she has one of these eyelash torture contraptions, that clamps onto a girl's eyelashes and supposedly, makes them curl, up. I think it's an eyelash curler. All right, and so she's in the process of doing that. Well, I come in there, I'm clowning around, and Linda is not a morning person to start with, and I am. I'm laughing and talking and singing and carrying on, and she just wants everybody to leave her alone, And so I come in there messing around with her, bumped her elbow while she had her eyelash curler clamped on her eyelashes, and she let out a big shriek. And she's holding that curler, and I look over her shoulder, and she opens the curler, and there is an entire set of eyelashes laying right there, on the little lip of the eyelash curler, and now she has one eyelid that has no eyelashes on it whatsoever. Well.
Tears come out of my eyes.
That was the moment that, in our experience together.
Man,
I think
I'm going to have to recover after.
I think Linda has never seriously thought about leaving me. But there have been a few times that she's thought about killing me, and that was one of the times that I think.
That's hilarious.
That if she could have, she would have killed me if she could have, right there in the bathroom.
What in the world did she say to you after she opened up that contraption and saw?
She was looking at her eyelashes there in that eyelash curler, and I mean, she was beyond words. she was just simply beyond words. I think she cried. Of course,
did she this got me torn up. Did she call into school that day or what?
No, she's a real trooper, and she kind of fixed up the best she could, and went on to school. I don't know, she might have worn sunglasses for a while.
What did you do? How did you apologize for that?
Of course, she couldn't say. I didn't know what to say. Of course, I was just as apologetic as I could possibly be, but of course that didn't fix anything, and it's going to take time. I don't really remember how long it took to regrow a complete set of eyelashes, but it took a while.
Good night.
Like I said, I think she kept the sunglasses pretty handy, during that time.
Thanks for listening to the Bird's Words podcast. I'm your host, John Birdwell. Be on the lookout for episode 6, part 3.